Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really fun little micro brand review for you from Dificiano watches. Now, basically, this brand, they really focus on having that vintage aesthetic and combining just classic good looks with modern features and specs, of course, at a lower cost. Now, as far as the type of watch this is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a dive watch. You're, of course, going to want some type of water resistance. Typically through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive bezel, and a diver's extension if you're on bracelet is always nice. Now, this particular model is called the Marlin, and this is the dark blue sunray dial model variant. So it is a retro-inspired diver with all the modern amenities. And when I say all the modern amenities, I mean all of them. Like, this thing is fully loaded to the teeth. And the nice thing is that it's actually under 400 bucks. This is only $399 direct. It was funded on Kickstarter, I believe, and they will actually be restocking very soon. So definitely keep an eye out. Follow the links in the description as far as that goes. Now, this thing is really, really well spec'd on paper. You got the 40 millimeter diameter, the 41.5 millimeter diameter for the bezel, so not that much overhang there. And it actually has a really nice grip mechanism. Everything is actually super nice. We'll get into that once we get it in hand. The thickness isn't too bad. It actually helps give the dial a little bit of depth, which I think is really nice. And the lug to lug, although it is a little bit long because they do swoop down very nicely, it actually wears really nice. Nicer than you would expect for something and kind of in this size range where it has a little bit of a longer lug, even though it has a little bit of a more a manageable case diameter. So this thing, guys, before I even get too far into it and get it in hand, just be prepared to hear me pretty much go on about how this thing just really surprised me, because it did. When the guys at Difiano Watches reached out, I saw the initial pictures, and it just seemed a little bit drab. I'm really hoping that this video can really bring out the quality of this bracelet, the dial, the execution on the bezel. There's so many things. The clasp is very well done. Just everything is done to such a high level, but they're kind of in also at the same time in ways that you might miss unless you really see it in person or hopefully on video. So hopefully this video will help you guys get a better idea of just how good this watch is. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get this piece in hand for a closer look. Okay, so being a diver, let's go ahead and work this bezel. Guys, this thing is dialed in. I love the fact that it's such a good balance between notchy and clicky, but also smooth and easy to turn. And a lot of it has to do with the way this is designed. You can see here that it actually does have a little bit of a separation from the case, a notch up before the grip begins, and it just really helps even with the gloves on. Woo! Nice 120 click unidirectional bezel, and this thing feels very, very legit. I'm very impressed with that, and you can actually probably already tell that the Lume is going to be really impressive on this one because it even kind of has that glow that you can almost tell like in the day. But look here, even in the studio lights, you do that and you can already see the Lume starting to show. So just a little indicator of what's to come for those low light transition and Lume shots. Then you have this great beads of rice bracelet that kind of has that split grain down the middle, which makes it even more, I'd say, interesting and enticing to the eye, which I really, really enjoy. And also, it just shows that they took a little extra step. I do love the taper here. It does taper down really nicely to 18 millimeters at this clasp here. So really nice. And then although it is thinner and more flexible, just really adds to the comfortableness of the watch. It actually is not tinny. So let's go ahead and give it a shake. like you hear the mass of that clasp. Let's do this side. Yeah, see, it's not tinny. That's the nice thing. So even though they're smaller, shorter links, they're almost like basically all like what many places would have as half links. So that's another nice thing, is you can actually dial this in to fit really, really well. And then of course you have, you know, pretty much the gold standard in ratcheting clasps for micro brands. You have this style of ratcheting clasp there, so you get the little dive extension if you need it to go over your wetsuit, or let's say it's kind of hot and you just need to give it a little extra kick out to let your wrist breathe. So nice if you have a little bit of wrist swelling. And as far as the finishing goes on here, you know, this thing is really nicely done. Nothing feels sharp or unfinished from that perspective. Case back, very clean. So of course, screw down crown there, and they have it offset closer to the 4 o'clock. Again, just little choices that they made that really make this thing look different. And then it has, of course, it has like a big crown, so it's not there's no crown guards on it, so it looks different than, you know, what you would think. And I mean, this doesn't make me think SKX or the 50 Atmos from Squall. Even though it's a diver with a similar aesthetic, and with a offset crown, it still feels a lot like its own thing, which I think is really, really impressive. As far as the insert, if you guys haven't noticed yet, it's full ceramic, also fully lumed. You do have fully applied indices. You have the date there at 6. You have a really nice contrasting chaptering here, which does actually help shrink the watch down visually. And I think in pictures you kind of imagine it's really big, but once you see it on wrist or you get it in hand, you actually realize that it's not. It's actually right there in a really nice sweet spot as far as that 40 millimeter diameter range, which I think is really great. And you can see these lugs do swoop down pretty nicely, and they're also drilled, which are, you know, of course, is great for a tool watch. Really easy to switch things out if you want to throw it on a rubber strap, which I think this is going to look gorgeous on if you throw it like on a tropic style strap, or really just any type of rubber strap that has a little bit of texturing on it. Also will work really well because of the longer lugs. It'll work really well with NATO straps as well. That lume is epic. It's C3 Swiss Superluminova, and you do have a 20 millimeter lug width, if I didn't cover that already. Just making sure I touch all of that before I get this on wrist, which let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this thing wears absolutely like a dream. Super comfortable with that beads of rice bracelet, guys. And then as you can see, I'll just go ahead and keep it steady for a while so you guys can get a nice look and an idea of how this wears. You can see there is a little bit of height there, and it might just be thrown off because of how thin this bracelet is, and not thin in a bad way. I'm just saying contrasting to how thick you have here. This is more of a side slab case versus something where they've done, you know, a lot of chamfering or made a lot of effort to really slim that down through any particular type of trickery. It's just kind of is what it is. To me, it's not overly thick, but you know, the slab side is always going to read a bit thicker than something that's going to have a little bit more contours. Love the way it sits on the wrist. Great mobility there. The contrast between the brushing and the polishing looks really, really great. And then of course that dial, quite intoxicating. I dig that it is a very high contrast blue, where you're going to get the really, really dark darks, but then the also bright brights, and the vibrantness when it's going to play with the light there. And then this dial in general, you can see it does have quite a bit of depth to it at harsh angle, but also is still extremely readable, which is a nice touch. So really a big fan of this one, especially at this price point. This thing is just so fully loaded. So let's go ahead and actually set it up for some low light transition and lume shots, as well as get to our closing thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, that loom is absolutely outstanding. You even get the loom on that chapter ring, and what to me appears to be BGW9. Don't quote me on that though, because I didn't see that on the site. But it's really beautiful, especially considering you also do have the fully indexed bezel insert. So you're gonna really have great options as far as timing goes, and then you're even gonna have that inner chapter ring, which is extremely legible even in the dark. I'm letting this run for a little bit just so you guys can get an idea that this is C3, and it's not only C3, it's applied very thick and very crisp and nicely. So as I'm talking, it's not really fading out. But while we have it here, let's go ahead and get in some low light transitions so you guys can get an idea of how that beautiful blue dial will render in less than optimal lighting conditions, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field or something standing around. As you can see there, it really renders super black with just a sliver of that blue. Here we go. And you can get really direct with it. Even right here, you can see it still has the sunburst effect. It doesn't completely wash out. Really great. And you can see that it's also still quite legible in that transitional lighting there, where you're not in full darkness. Wow. And then you can even take a close look at those bracelet brushings and whatnot, and you can really see the way the light just dances over them, and you can see that it's quite uniform. If you look at the links while I move from here to here, you can really see how uniform that brushing is. So very, very impressed. This is definitely a very different and impressive piece. You know, when I think of kind of vintage retro divers with big crowns, you know, I feel like I already had that idea of what that would look like in my head, and then there's something like this comes out, and it's just so different, but at the same time fits the niche and the design aesthetic so well. It's really, really cool and quite interesting. So let's go ahead and get the lights back on and get into some closing thoughts. Guys, on wrist, this thing has really classic proportions. It wears super well. Of course, there is a slightly taller height, especially considering that it's only 40 millimeters wide. But, you know, I think it really helps add some depth to that dial. So it also helps aesthetically, as well as the fact that this is a 300-meter water-resistant watch. So it's also quite robust. So let's not forget about that when we were considering the thickness here. As far as model variants go, you're going to definitely want to check current availability for what they have in stock. But there are black dial, silver dial, and a gray dial. So those options are all available, and then they all just basically have different types of accent colors. This one is probably the more muted accents because it's just simple blue, black, and white setup. But you know, I'm a big fan of this one. As far as comparable models go, it's tough to compare something like the, you know, that's, you start thinking, wow, this is like $400. NH movement, there's a lot in that space. There's even a lot in that space that are really going for that value threshold and squeezing in features like ceramic and deeper depth ratings, and, you know, fully done, you know, done to the top degrees of what you can get at this price point. So it's really a flooded market, and the crazy thing is this thing really stands out, and it's probably a real testament to just how good micro brands have gotten at this point, and how much value they can cram into a single watch. I mean, for me, this is really the perfect example of that. You know, just there's micros have become fully loaded, man. These things just have it all. I feel like because they are enthusiast driven, they really target you know, everything, all the little thoughts. Hey, why not this? Why did you do that? And they're already, you know, they're ahead of you. They already has a solid everything, and it has drilled lugs and a ratcheting clasp and a loomed ceramic insert. Like, it did everything. It moves the date to the 6 o'clock position. So it's like there's so many good things that are on here that are the things that people really have pet peeves about, and that they've worked, you know, around and really kind of quote unquote fixed for this watch. So with all that said, let me actually know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, make sure to hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.